You grew up learning that strength is silence. Emotions were whispers you sent underground, locked away in rooms no one ever visited. From the moment you first scraped your knee and cried, you heard, "Be brave, don't cry." Then there's the existential toll. When you've spent years cultivating an external mask and an internal oubliette, you begin to question your own existence. Who are you beneath the walls? If feelings are imprisoned so deeply you can't access them, how can you claim a coherent identity? You might pursue hobbies, achievements, or relationships to fill the void, yet nothing sticks. Your life feels like a set of borrowed narratives, borrowed blueprints, none drawn by you. Worst of all, you risk passing this architecture to the next generation. Children mirror the adults around them. They learn the art of emotional exile by witnessing your silent battles. They pick up the same cognitive distortions, the same fear of feeling, the same misinformation that suffering must be forgotten, not explored. The cycle perpetuates. Emotional walls beget more walls, until an entire culture exists in quasi-stoic isolation, calling it strength. Ask yourself, how many times have you misread a friend's supportive gesture as pity? How often have you said, "I'm fine," even when you're not? How many dreams have you shelved for fear they would collapse under the slightest criticism? Each answer reveals a new fracture in your house of emotions. These unseen consequences may not register on wellness checklists or corporate performance metrics, but their impact is profound. They undermine creativity, erode trust, and corrode your sense of self. They whisper that vulnerability equals weakness, that emotions are obstacles, that silence is the only path to acceptance. And with every unspoken word, every unshared tear, the weight of your invisible walls grows heavier. Yet awareness alone is not enough. Recognizing the cracks, the biases, the neural patterns only sets the stage. You still stand inside your self-built prison. The real question is, will you stay a prisoner, or will you risk exposure to reclaim your world? What if escaping your emotional prison requires a blowtorch, not a key? What if the path to freedom isn't a gentler whisper to yourself, but a radical act of defiance against every rule you ever learned? You discover that the strongest walls in your mind were built by well-meaning voices, parents, teachers, culture, insisting you be strong, keep it together, don't overreact. These walls scream conformity, but now you're ready to shout back. Rebellion begins the moment you question the premise that silence is strength. The moment you realize vulnerability isn't a flaw but a force. First, you name the lie. That feelings must be controlled or contained. You give voice to the very emotions you once buried. You let shame tremble in the open air. You weep in public, laugh in sorrow's shadow, and rage against injustices that once left you numb. With each authentic expression, you chip away at the facade of your persona. You reclaim territory in the hidden rooms of your psyche. But words alone won't dismantle centuries of conditioning. Action is your detonator. Here's how you ignite the revolution. 1. Radical acknowledgement. You carve out 15 minutes every morning to scan your emotional landscape. You ask, what's here? Fear, anger, grief, desire? No judgment allowed. You journal with brutal honesty. Today, I'm terrified of being seen. I'm furious about how I was treated. I crave connection even if it scares me. In naming these feelings, you refuse to let them operate as silent syndicates. They become known forces you can negotiate with, instead of hidden tyrants that sabotage you. Public vulnerability challenges. You choose 3 people you trust, perhaps a close friend, a mentor, or a partner, and you share one vulnerability you've never voiced. You might admit you're terrified of failure, or that you felt unloved as a child. Their reactions don't matter as much as the act itself. Every time you expose a crack, you prove the facade can hold without collapsing. You rewrite the hotel script. Vulnerability isn't a weakness. It's a bridge. Emotional exposure therapy. Just like exposure therapy for phobias, you deliberately face feelings you've been avoiding. If anger terrifies you, you set timers to invite focused anger sessions. Scream into a pillow, write a blistering letter you never send. Stomp your feet on the ground until your muscles remember the power behind rage. If sadness has been exiled, you listen to grief-stricken music, watch film scenes that make you sob, and sit with tears until they lose their sting. Gradual immersion defangs these emotions, transforming them from ghosts into guides. Redefining strength. You draft a personal manifesto that frames strength as the courage to feel. You tape it to your bathroom mirror. To feel is to know yourself. To express is to connect. To heal is to own your history. Each morning you recite it. Over time, the words replace the old commandments of Stoic suppression. Creative rebuilding. You become an architect of your own emotional landscape. Take a blank sketchbook or a digital canvas and design the rooms you want your inner world to have. A room of laughter with skylights that let gratitude pour in. A room of sorrow with plush cushions where you can rest. A workshop of anger where you can channel energy into art, exercise, or activism. By visualizing and mapping your emotional blueprint, you move from destruction to construction. History offers proof that these steps ignite transformation. Consider Audre Lorde, who called poetry the revelation of feeling, insisting that unspoken grief and anger become the wellspring of empowerment. Or look to Frida Kahlo, whose paintings bled her pain onto canvas, shattering the notion that artists, or any of us, must mask our wounds. Their rebellions weren't polite. They were seismic. They refused to hide, and in doing so, rerouted entire cultural narratives. Yet rebellion isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing insurgency. Each day, the old wall bricks will try to reseal the gaps you created. Critics will label your openness as oversharing. Colleagues may call your vulnerability unprofessional. Family members might circle back to keep your composure. These are counterattacks. Expect them. Prepare to reinforce your new architecture with daily acts of defiance. You might stumble. You might regret a moment of raw honesty that felt too exposed. You might slip back into old habits of smiling through pain. When that happens, you don't chastise yourself. You observe. You log the setback in your journal. I hid my tears when I spoke with Anna today. Why? Then you return to exposure therapy, knowing every misstep is data, not disgrace. Through this rebellion, two things happen simultaneously. The walls you dismantle no longer define you, and the rooms you build become sanctuaries. You begin to experience life not as a series of guarded checkpoints, but as an open terrain of emotional weather. Sunlit days of joy, stormy nights of grief, gentle breezes of affection. You host yourself with compassion rather than suspicion. And here's the kicker. Breaking free isn't just personal liberation. It radiates outward. As you live openly, others around you get permission to do the same. Colleagues start sharing real concerns instead of shallow pleasantries. Friends admit wow, and they're struggling instead of posting filtered happiness. You spark a contagion of authenticity that redraws the emotional architecture of your entire community. This is your rebellion. Overturn the dogmas that told you strength is silence. Replace hidden prisons with open havens. Dare to feel, share, construct, and repeat. Because when you rebel against the emotional architecture you inherited, you don't just reclaim your feelings, you reclaim your world. Imagine yourself standing at the crest of a crumbling fortress you once called home. Below, the walls of fear, shame, and silent rage lie in ruin. A wind stirs the dust of old memories, laughter and tears mingling in the same gust. You step forward, barefoot on broken bricks, and realize that every fragment underfoot is forged from a single element: feeling. You once believed emotions were volatile intruders, storms to weather, weaknesses to conceal. Yet here you stand, amidst the wreckage, recognizing the paradox. Those very forces you feared are the raw material of your world. Without the tremor of anxiety, there would be no urgency to seek safety. Without the ache of loss, you'd never cherish connection. Feelings are not obstacles. They are the clay with which reality is molded. Philosophers from Plato to Sartre warned against mistaking appearances for essence. You've lived in a shadow play, mistaking the facade of your persona for your true self. But the final revelation shatters that illusion. Your emotions do not merely reflect reality, they constitute it. The anger you suppressed painted your horizon in red. The joy you neglected starved your inner sun. Every sensation has drafted the blueprint of your existence. Neurologists call it affective realism, the mind's tendency to see the world through the filter of feeling. Yet this neurological fact holds a liberating truth. If feelings build your reality, then reshaping your emotions reshapes your reality. The walls you dismantled in rebellion now serve as mortar for a new architecture, one built on awareness, choice, and integration. You are both architect and inhabitant. No longer must you cede control to unconscious scripts written by ancestral fears or cultural dogma. With each breath, you can choose the emotional tone that guides perception. You can cultivate curiosity instead of dread, compassion instead of contempt, gratitude instead of resentment. In this conscious craftsmanship lies your ultimate power. Here, at the edge of possibility, the final truth emerges. Liberation is not found by eliminating emotions, but by mastering them. Much like a symphony conductor channels every instrument's voice into a unified masterpiece, you can orchestrate your inner landscape. Sadness can deepen empathy. Anger can fuel justice. Love can illuminate purpose. Each feeling becomes a note you wield, not a chain that binds. Now envision the world that arises from such mastery. Your mornings begin in a hall of gratitude, where sunlight dances on polished floors of hope. Your afternoons unfold in corridors of courage, lined with windows of curiosity. Evenings rest in cathedrals of peace, where you honor both shadow and light. This is emotional architecture in its highest form, a home where every feeling has a room, and every room has a purpose. So step through the threshold. Feel the breeze of intentional emotion brush your skin. Listen to the echo of your own voice declaring, "I choose this world." With that declaration, you do more than rebuild. You redefine the very essence of life. No longer a passive resident in a house you inherited, you become the visionary architect of an ever-evolving masterpiece. The deepest struggle, then, is also the greatest gift. The walls you dismantle reveal the infinite potential within. The scars you acknowledge become the keystones of a new design. Your world is not given. It is felt, chosen, and continuously crafted by the pulse of your own heart. And in that endless construction lies the most powerful realization of all. You are both the architect of your emotions and the builder of your reality. Every feeling you embrace, every room you design, becomes the world you live in. So build wisely, live boldly, and let your emotional architecture shine,